What's up, tribe? Happy Sunday to you all. Before we get into this video, I must give you guys a content warning. This entire video discusses the issue of sexual abuse. So if that is going to be a trigger for you, or that is something that you are not willing and or able to sit through, I'm giving you a warning now. So I appreciate the support. You can just hit the like button and leave if it's going to trigger you, because I definitely do not want to trigger anybody. Okay? All right. Now let's get into the things. Let's get into this. Let me say hi to everybody. First of all, thank you. We have a new member. Tamara Nichelle. Thank you so much for becoming a member. Welcome. All right. Lemon Kush, who is always one of the first people in the room. You are usually the first person in the room. MS Bynum, been waiting on me to review this. Okay. Hey, Keisha. You gonna catch the replay? Thank you, my love. All right, King Retro, just dropping in and say hi. Thanks for coming through. Hey, Nico. Tracy, what's up? All right, you guys. So, we lost a few people. Okay. All right, may have been a trigger warning. Okay. All right, you guys, let's get into it. Okay. Hey. Welcome. Happy Sunday to everybody. All right, you guys. So, hey, Lady D, what's going on? So, we are getting ready to talk about the connection between Menudo and the Menendez brothers. So, I have my notes, which I have a lot of notes because it was actually 3 episodes, and rather than come and do 3 different reviews, which is what I usually do when it's something that has multiple episodes, I usually do like um a video for each one. I'm just going to combine it all into one video. So it's going to be one video, and like I said, the notes, I got a lot of notes. I did invite Pam. Let me send her a text just in case, because she may be busy. But I did send Pam, because y'all know Pam, the law intellect. She talked about the Menendez brothers. She talked about the Menendez brothers on her. She did a live last week, and she talked about the legal case, which we're going to talk about in a minute. So I invited her to come on up if she wanted to kind of join us. I'm gonna send her. Let me send her a text real quick to let her know she has the link. Okay, but it is Sunday. You know, she may be with the family and be busy, and that's cool too. So where do I even begin? I guess I'm gonna just go in the order of the notes. It is a lot, you guys. For those of you that are new to everything I'm talking about, like you have no idea what's going on, you just here because you love Really Be. Let me thank you, Tracy. Yes, y'all. I told you I was getting my hair braided yesterday, child. Let me go back to the beginning. First of all, in the description box, I have linked the reviews from Menudo Forever, which came on, I believe it was HBO. Yeah, it came on HBO last year. It was 4 different episodes, so I do have all 4 episodes. It's in the description box link. So some of this, a lot of the Menudo stuff came up in that documentary, and I really meant to check the years. Well, not the year on the documentary, but like so much information overlapped that some stuff didn't make sense to me. But I'm gonna get to that when I get to it. But for those who do not know what Menudo is or who Menudo is a boy band group from Puerto Rico. They were started in the 1970s by a man by the name Eduardo Diaz. Started in the 1970s, and they rose to fame mainly in the early 1980s. Was really like what they call their golden era, like the really the decade of the 80s was really what they were calling their golden era. And the band sort of fizzled out by the late 1990s or early 2000s. Probably one of its most famous alumni of the band is Ricky Martin, and I'm going to get back to Ricky Martin in a second as well. Um, But the premise of Menudo was that it was a boy group, and oh, somebody just gifted a membership. Thank you, Jessica. Hold on, let me get the shout outs. Thank you, Jessica, for gifting memberships. I love you guys. Yes. Yes. Hold on. Let me go into my. Let me go in here. Tracy sent the photo. So Jessica gifted a membership, and Xavier, Xavier, you got your membership back. All right. Congratulations. Congratulations. So, um, the whole premise of Menudo was it was a boy band group, and the minute they hit puberty, they had to leave the group. They were kicked out at age 16 or when their voice dropped, whichever kind of came first, they were kicked out. Now there were a few exceptions. A few of the more popular ones were allowed to stay till like 17, but for the most part, they were gone by the time they were 18. Um, Now in the documentary Menudo Forever, it was explained why this happened. Now, in the documentary, what was explained was that Eduardo Diaz, who was the founder of Menudo, he had a kid group before, prior to Menudo. Yes, Ricky Martin got his start in Menudo. Yes, prior to Menudo, he had a group. It was a brother and sister group. Like it was like five of them. It was like the Jacksons kind of thing, but there was a female. I mean, there was a girl in the group. Um, there was a girl in the group, and then there were a couple of the rest of the group. I think was all boys, but they were brother and sister. They were like a big hit in Puerto Rico. They were, touring all over the country, all through South America. They were making a lot of money. But once the voices started changing, the record company didn't know what to do with them, and basically the group fizzled away. So Eduardo always explained that the reason why the boys had to leave at 16 is because of that previous experience, that as long as he had that voice, that he could always recapture that sound. But once the voices dropped, then it changed everything, and he wanted to stay in that teeny bopper fan base, right? He also said that he didn't want to work with girls anymore because there was so much more work with girls as they're going through puberty and having to have separate facilities, and all the chaperones and stuff. He said it was just too much work for a girl to be a part of the group. So that's why he no longer wanted to work with groups. Hey, Kenneth. Hey, my love. Now, in hindsight, when I finish getting to the rest of this conversation, all of that's going to sound like a whole lot of who hockey. But I think in the time period, it was enough of an explanation to make everybody comfortable with this grown ass man always surrounding himself with little boys. Does that make sense? Okay, and y'all know because of the subject matter and because of YouTube regulations, I have to be very careful with my language. So I'm gonna need y'all to really work with me while I try to be very creative with how I need to say things. Okay. We want this chant. We want this video to stay monetized. We want this video to stay monetized. Right, Renee. In 2023, it sounds really weird, and it should have sounded weird in the 1970s. But again, it was a different time. Which again, as we get deeper into this subject matter, yeah. Menudo is a boy band, all boy band. Menudo is an all boy band. Yes. And like I said, their most famous alumni is Ricky Martin. Living la vida loca. Y'all know who Ricky Martin is, right? Okay. Out of Puerto Rico. So, how is all of this connected to the Menendez brothers, you say? Well, that's a good question. And that's what this. So, it's so much to say. I feel like I'm gonna be jumping all over the place, but I'm gonna just start with my notes because I feel like if I just start talking, I'm gonna be all over the place. So let me just start with my notes, you guys. So the documentary, part one, it's a three-part series. Part one of the for lack of a better word, I'm gonna just call it a documentary. Part one, it gives you the background on the Menendez brothers. So for those of you who do not know who the Menendez brothers are, or you don't remember all the details, which I look back now on the Menendez brothers and I remember it happening. But of course it was 30 years ago. So a lot of details have been changed. I mean, have a lot of details have I've forgotten. But also, not only have I forgotten a lot of the details, I look back now and I'm like, well, I remember the sensationalism of it, and I remember the story that they wanted us to believe, maybe not necessarily what really went down, right? So they start this off by explaining what happened with the Menendez brothers. So the Menendez brothers um were from a rich family, lived in Beverly Hills, grew up with all of the, all of the things, went to the best schools, had all of the, had all of the things, right? Came from this out from the outside looking in, this great life, with this great family and all this money and so forth and so on. They One day their parents were killed in a very brutally violent way, and eventually they were arrested and charged, and they did admit to doing it, but they sort of said they did it, not sort of, they said they did it because their father had been abusing them their whole life, and their mother knew about it and allowed it to happen, and basically they basically snapped. Now again, I need all of us to get in our spaceships, our time machines, and I need us to go back to the early 1980s. We cannot look at this through the lens of 2023, post Me Too, post a whole lot of things coming to reality that we now accept to be true, post people keeping family business, post us keeping secrets about what Uncle Johnny did and what Aunt Bertha did. You know what I'm saying? Like, the early 1980s, people just did not talk as openly and freely about these sort of atrocities that we do today. And I'm not excusing anything. I just want us to remember. We need to get in. We need to put ourselves in a certain mindset, because I think a lot of times we look at stuff from a 2023 vantage point, and that's not fair, because that's just not what the world was in the early 1980s. So, with that being said, let's get now. Just have to tell my students, y'all, we gotta get in our time machines. So, the Menendez brothers were put on trial. Their first trial ended in a hung jury, 6-6. Six. Now they would listen. They never said they didn't do it. Their defense was never that they were innocent, or was never. Oh, what did I do? Hold on. I'm sorry. Their defense was never, oh, I didn't do it. Oh, we didn't do it. That was never their defense. Their defense was sort of self defense. Like, we were trying to stop the abuse, right? So it ended in a hung jury. 6 jurors voted for manslaughter, and 6 jurors voted for murder in the first degree. Well, back then in the early 80s in California, they even still had the death penalty in California at that time. So they were really fighting for their lives. Manslaughter, I think the maximum they'd have been in jail for like 20 to 22 years. Well, they've already been in jail for 30 years. So if they had been convicted of manslaughter, they would be out by now, yada, yada, yada. Well, in the first trial, the defense was able to um, bring in a lot of the evidence. The defense was able to bring in a lot of the evidence from neighbors, family members, different things that would show that there probably was, that would corroborate their story, that there was some abuse. There was a family friend that testified or at the trial um, about Lyle telling her that his father touched him or made him touch him. That testified. There was also testimony that one of the brothers, I don't remember which brother, wrote an essay when he was a kid about a father who molested his kids and was put to death, was arrested and put to death. So like all of these things came into evidence at the time. Um, And so that's what led to the split jury. Half the jury believed the brothers, the other half of the jury didn't. Like, that's what led to this split decision. Well, here's where you guys got to understand what was going on in the world especially in LA during this time period. So between the first trial and the second trial, something happened. And here's what happened in between the first trial and the second trial. O.J. Simpson was found not guilty, right? A total embarrassment to the LA attorney's office, to the LAPD, all of that, right? It was a total embarrassment that O.J. Simpson was found not guilty. Now, for those of you who weren't there, don't remember what it was like. It was almost like Black people felt vindicated when O.J. Simpson was found not guilty, right? Oh my gosh! Even though, I'm sorry, y'all. My TV just went blank all of a sudden. I don't know what's going on. Even though I have to worry about that in a minute. Even though all of a sudden the even though O.J. Simpson had stopped people felt like he sold out and he stopped identifying as a Black man, all that kind of stuff. But we felt like, wow, the justice system finally worked for somebody. Like, a lot of people felt that way. Now, a lot of people didn't necessarily feel like O.J. Simpson was innocent, but a lot of people felt like, oh, we finally get a taste of what it's like. If you got enough money, you can beat anything. It's hard to explain now, but that was sort of the mindset. Like, oh, well, you're criminal, because white America was mad as hell. And I remember saying, oh, you mad because your system finally worked for one of us. We finally found one that was rich enough to buy the best attorneys and put on the most expensive defense and get off. Oh, now you mad? Oh, but you ain't mad when it's y'all. You see what I'm saying? So that's just kind of what it was. So by the time the second trial came about, now it was like, we need to save face. We can't take another hit. We got a mistrial in the Menendez case. We lost the OJ case. We can't take another hit. And for the second trial, it seemed like there was an effort to do that. And the reason why I say that is because all of the judge ruled against all of that testimony coming in. So for the second trial, they were not allowed, the defense was not allowed to bring in any evidence, any of the witnesses that spoke to their belief, their suspicions, the boys telling them anything. They were not allowed to bring in the evidence about the essay that one of the brothers wrote about their father, about a father molesting their child. They were not allowed to bring in anything that would have in any way, shape, or form corroborated the story of abuse. And so basically what ended up happening was, by the time they got to the end of the trial, in the closing argument, all the DA had to say was, we haven't seen any evidence of abuse. They're just lying. They're just spoiled rich boys who wanted their parents' fortune, and it wasn't coming fast enough. They wanted to just go out here and live their best life, and their parents were an inconvenience to them, right? And so, thank you, Lauren. Thank you. And so that is what, and I never knew that, obviously. I mean, I remember the Menendez trial, but I wasn't following it like that. So I didn't know that the first trial was that different from the second trial. Hey, KK, it was that different from the second trial. I never knew. So, with that being said, there was a reporter who at the time was working for the LA Times or something like that. And he said, the one thing we know about abusers is that, generally speaking, there's a pattern. And what he was saying was, if we can find a pattern, if we can find any other victims, if we can find anybody else that claims that they are a victim of Menendez, then we can show a pattern, and that will be enough. Because remember, they were doing their appeals, so that started a 20-something year y'all know what I'm trying to say. I can't get it out, y'all. Y'all know what I'm trying to say. A 20-something year journey, for lack, I can't think of the word I'm looking for, to try to find other victims of Menendez. Okay, so that is how that is where the Menendez part of this comes in. Now, here's what I think is going on with this whole situation. I think that whoever was producing this documentary was already doing this documentary. I think they were already talking to Ray, who we're getting ready to talk about in a minute. I think they were doing a documentary on Ray's journey to get justice. And I'm gonna talk in a minute. Y'all gonna be like, "Who's Ray?" I'm gonna tell you in a minute who Ray is. But I think they were already doing this documentary, and in the process of doing this documentary, they got this information about Menendez and was like, "Oh, wait a minute, we got a juggernaut right here," and they spliced in the Menendez stuff. And the reason why I say that is because there really isn't a lot on the Menendez. It's mainly focused on Ray, his journey, and his story. So I feel like they were starting on one path, and as they were uncovering the information, they uncovered this rock that had Menendez under it, and they were like, "Wait a minute, Menendez, like the daddy? Oh, snap!" And then that's where the rest of this comes in. That's my 2 cents. So let me get into these notes so you guys understand. Okay. So here's the connection between Menudo and Menendez's daddy. I think his name is Jose Menendez. Here's the connection. In the 1980s, and if you go back and look at the documentary on HBO or just look at my reviews, which is in the description box, in the 1980s, and the funny thing is, so much of what was in this documentary overlapped, and it corroborated a lot of what was in the documentary that was on HBO. In the 1980s, RCA Menudo was already a big hit in Puerto Rico and in South America. They had been touring South America or Latin countries already. They were a huge, huge hit. They wanted to break into the U.S. market because you guys know that the U.S. market, it'll take you to another level. So they came to New York and they did shows here in New York. And of course, the large Latino population in New York already knew who Menudo was. They were already going crazy for Menudo. And they sold out. I think they did like 10 shows at Madison Square Garden or something crazy. And they sold out. And it was just this huge, huge, huge. Auntie Didi, this was on Peacock. The other one was on HBO. And they said even Prime, I think, did a documentary on Menudo. So a lot of this information is overlapping because a lot of this information about Menudo is starting to come out. People are starting to talk. So in the documentary, they talked about the fact that in the early 1980s, I think it was like 1983, RCA signed Menudo to a contract to break into the American market. And I remember talking about that in the documentary because that's when we started seeing like Menudo getting the endorsement deals. That's where they started having like English. They started singing in English. They started doing a lot more to accommodate the English, the American market. Here's the connection. Y'all ready? Jose Menendez, excuse me, the father, the Menendez brothers' father, was president of RCA at the time that Menudo got this $30 million contract. There's the connection. It gets deeper, but there's the connection, okay? So when Menudo gets this huge contract, Menendez was the one who signed off on it. They said that Menendez was obsessed with Menudo. He loved Menudo. He was obsessed with Menudo. Hey, Yana, I understand, my love. We're just getting started, but I understand, girl. Okay. So I'm just making sure I get to my notes, child. It's a lot. Okay. Now, Eduardo Diaz, who was the founder of Menudo, he was constantly holding auditions for new members. Because I told you guys at the beginning of this that at age 16, they cycled out. All right. So he was always having auditions. And here's what the audition process was. The parents would drop their kids off at his mansion in San Juan, Puerto Rico, and they would stay for the weekend. And then the parents would come and pick them up, or he would get the kids a ride home like that Monday. So they would stay the whole weekend for this audition process. He had this huge mansion in San Juan. Again, weird, right? Right. So here's the thing. In the documentary, that's why, if you guys are interested, go back. It does, Natalie. Oh, it does. Go back and look at the review or the documentary that Menudo Forever on HBO, because it really digs deeper into that. But what I remember from the documentary is Eduardo would specifically, I'm gonna just call a thing. In my opinion, Eduardo was a groomer. He was a groomer, and he knew how to choose people that wouldn't complain. So here's what I'm saying by that. They said that he would specifically choose kids from poor families who did not have the means. So for example, he wouldn't allow parents to travel with the group. He said it was a distraction. So he wouldn't allow the parents to travel. But he's choosing poor families that don't have the means to do it anyway. So like if you're saying I can't travel with the band, I don't have the money to fly there independently. I don't have the money to follow my child around the country independently. I just have to just trust you and depend on you. Also, if I'm poor, you're promising me a mansion and a car, and that my kid is going to be making all of this money. And I see how successful Menudo is. I see that they're a national treasure. Everybody in San Juan knew Menudo and loved Menudo. And I mean, Menudo was like it. They were the shit. They shut the country down. Okay. And you're promising me this? My child is going to be that. They're going to be on posters. Girls are going to be fainting. They're going to have sold out concerts all over the place. Oh, you want me to sign over my parental rights so that you have the right to take them to the doctor if they get sick and make sure they're being tutored and all that? Sure. Here you go. Let me sign that contract over. The check is going to come on the first of the month every month. Okay, cool. Right? And again, I'm not judging these parents. Because from the outside looking in, it looked like it was a great opportunity for their kids. Right? Exactly, Lauren. They didn't pick the kid. I'm sure there were a whole lot of kids that could sing, but they came from a good family. I mean, I shouldn't say good family, but a more affluent family or from a more affluent part of town. He didn't choose them. Oh, no, no, no. He chose the kids that needed the money, that came from families that needed the money. That's just that. And that was in the documentary about how he specifically went into the poor neighborhoods and chose those kids. Like, it was very calculated. It was not by accident. I mean, if you probably go through in the documentary, it goes through all the different boys that were a part of the group. And I forget how many the final number was that had been a member of Menudo from the beginning to the end, but it was over 100 kids, young men. It was over 100 young men. I don't think any of them came from a rich family or from a upper middle class family. I don't think any of them did. I think all of them came from the poorest neighborhoods of Puerto Rico. Even when I think I think he did recruit. Hey, Jonathan, thank you, boo. I think he did recruit a couple of kids out of like other outside of Puerto Rico. Even then, they were still from the poor neighborhoods and the poor family. I think one kid He did recruit from New York, who was he's Puerto Rican, but he lived in New York. They were from the Bronx. Y'all know what the Bronx was in the late 70s, early 80s in New York. Y'all know what it was. You know, um, I wonder if his motivation for even starting Menudo was to feed his appetite of grooming and intimately dealing with young boys. L. Atkinson, I'm gonna be honest with you and tell you, to a certain extent, I'm going to say yes because again, remember his first group was a kids group, and I don't remember all of the details of everybody he ever worked with. So I can't say that he never worked with adult groups. But again, he worked with the kids groups even at that point. So with that background information, in walks Ray. Sorry, there's a Roy too. No, Roy. Damn it. Roy. We get to Ray later. Ray and his brother Raul. Roy. Roy Areles, I believe his last name was Areles, Arleas, I think. He was a member of Menudo from 1983 to 1986. So we and this is why I said I feel like this documentary was supposed to be Roy's story from the beginning. And as Roy was telling his story, he mentioned Jose Menendez, and I think they were like, "Whoa, wait a minute, what?" And then they brought the Menendez brothers into this. And again, as I go through my notes, you'll understand more of what I'm saying. Listen, T52, after this documentary, I'm going to have to say, because here's the thing. If you believe Roy's story, then you almost have to believe it. If you believe Roy's story, let me put a pin in this before I get into Roy's story, because the remainder of this is mainly about, wait a minute, hold on. Hold on, I just want to see if I put something in my notes. Yeah, never mind, because it's in my notes. It's in my notes. It's in my notes. So as long as it's in my notes, I'll say it. I just don't want to forget to say stuff. Rosello is Rosello. Okay, so I just made up a whole last name for him. Thank you, Jessica. That's his name, Roy Rosello. So Roy, so we learned a little bit about Roy. Roy loves soccer. Roy actually was a really good soccer player. He actually played for like the sort of like the farm club for like the top for what's the top soccer club? I don't really follow soccer, but I know I reckon like Madrid United. What is it? Is it United? Whatever one of the top soccer clubs over in Europe. He actually played for their theater team. And he was really, really good. And he actually wanted to be a soccer player until he discovered music. He said that he always loved music. He always loved to sing and dance. And so um, his mom enrolled him in a music school, right, to take music classes and stuff like that. Listen, Atkinson, L. Atkinson, that's what I had to make sure I had in my notes. That is the exact part that I had to make sure I had in my notes, baby. We're going to get to that in a minute. So he started going to this music school, which happened to be like a block away from where Eduardo Diaz had his studio situation for Menudo, right? So he became friends with one of the members of Menudo, and he took him to the studio one day. And he said, as they were, the girls used to hang out outside of the studio waiting for members of Menudo to just come in and out to get autographs and stuff like that. Remember, I need y'all to understand how big Menudo was in Puerto Rico. Like they were, I guess, imagine Beyonce being Puerto Rican. I don't know. I don't know how else and her living in Puerto Rico and her walking the streets of Puerto Rico and people being able to see her regularly. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know how else to explain how big Menudo was in Puerto Rico. Like they just were it. And that's important later on. That's going to become important later on when we get to um how Eduardo got away with a lot of stuff. You got to understand how powerful he became because of how big Menudo was and how much pride the country had in Menudo. But anyway, so the girls would hang out outside waiting to get autographs. And when Roy said he showed up with his friend, the girls asked him for his autograph. And he was like, I'm not even in the group. Like, I guess they just think either I'm going to be in a group one day or something, but I'm not even in the group. He said that Eduardo was watching from his office. He watched him come in, and Eduardo's secretary was like, let me, bring him to me. So the secretary went and got him. He said, Mr. Diaz wants to talk to you. So Roy said he said he was 13 at the time, 13, 14 at the time. He went and talked to Eduardo. And Eduardo started making him all sorts of promises. Don't you want to be famous? Don't you want to have nice cars? Don't you want to buy a mansion for your mom? Don't you want to blah, 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 blah. Like making, all that, making all these promises. So, of course, Roy was like, okay, hell yeah. Like, I'm 14 years old. And at the time, he said that what was going on at home at the time was his mom was sick. She had gotten really sick. That they never said what her illness was. They didn't say whether it was cancer or whether it was mentally sick. They just said she was really sick and she wasn't able to really be on top of. I felt like it was mental. And the only reason why I say that is because they made it seem like she was not able to, she wasn't present during this time period. I didn't feel like, I could be wrong, y'all, but that's the impression I got, is that because they didn't want to say what her illness was, but it doesn't matter whether it was physical or mental. The point was that they were trying to let us know that she was not able to physically be a part of what was going on with him at the time, right? Also, his stepfather left during this time, so the mom became a single parent during this time period. So again, it plays into the mom not financially being able to be present, not emotionally or physically able to be present, and Roy feeling a sense of desperation, like I need the help. Like stepdaddy done left us, mama got three, stuck us with four. I think it was three or four of them, and I got to do my part. Even at 14 years old, he felt like I got to do my part. So here's where, listen, I gave, hold on, let me do this one more time because it's really about to get ugly now, y'all. So I need to make sure that we all understand the following video contains material that may be harmful or traumatizing. And I'm not saying that to be funny. I'm just trying to be very sensitive because and let me say this to you as well. If you do choose to go watch the documentary, this one is streaming on Peacock. I think the one that was on HBO was a little more tactful, but in this one, it is very raw. Roy is very explicit in his experience, and he has a right to that. I don't think he should be censored. I think he should be able to tell his story the way he's telling his story. But I just need you guys to be ready for that. Okay. So if you can't handle it or you feel like it's going to be a trigger, then please, please, please exit stage left. I love you, and just come back tonight for the Real Housewives of Atlanta. I just want to be very honest. Now, with that being said, Roy said that Eduardo picked him up from school one day, picked him up from school. Eduardo was able to convince the principal to let him take Roy out of school. This is how powerful Eduardo was. Everybody knew Eduardo. Also remember, Puerto Rico is an island, y'all. We're not talking about the United States of America. We're talking about a small island, okay? Everybody knew who Eduardo Diaz was. Everybody knew that he recruited kids for Menudo. Everybody knew what Menudo was. So he shows up at the school and says, hey, Roy is auditioning for Menudo. I have permission from his mom. I need him to come with me. Roy didn't tell his parents the truth. Well, his mom told his mom he was staying over a friend's house. That should have been the first clue, not for a 14-year-old, because again, I'm not blaming Roy at all. But again, that's a red flag right there that you had to tell a lie about where you were going and who you was going with. Yes, he is still alive. Renee, we're gonna get there, honey. Ooh, we're gonna get there. Yes, he's still alive, child. So he said that Eduardo took him to his mother's house that night. Didn't take him back to his house. And there were two accounts in this documentary where the mother knew what was going on. Roy said that Eduardo, they got to his mother's house and he took him in the back room, and once again he's promising him, oh, if you become a part of Menudo, that you're gonna be living good, and I'm gonna buy you a house, and you'll be able to get a house and a car and make lots of money and take care of your own. Like, he's reiterating all these promises to him again, right? He said that the mother called Eduardo out of the room, and he said he overheard Eduardo talking to his mom, and his mom telling him, "Don't mess with that boy. Leave that boy alone." And Eduardo was like, "What are you talking about, Mom? What do you mean? What do you mean?" She was like, "I know what you're thinking. Leave that boy alone." Now, later on in the documentary, another former member of the group said the same thing, that Eduardo's mother knew what he was doing to the boys. So that is corroborated by somebody else who said the same thing. So later on that night, he said that they did put him in a room by himself, that Eduardo wasn't in the room, but later on that night, Eduardo snuck into the room and sexually assaulted him. I can't say the word. I really wish I could just say the word, the R word. I really wish I could say it, but again, we're trying to keep our monetization on this video. Because the reason why I wish I could say the word is because I need y'all to understand that I think sexually assaulted is just too nice of a way of saying it. But he did. Okay, this grown ass man assaulted this 14-year-old boy. And he said that he screamed and hollered. So he said there's no way that the mama didn't know what happened. No way that the mother did not know, because he said the way that he screamed and the way that he hollered, and he said they were in a small house, they weren't in a mansion. The mother had to know what was going on. Okay. And from that point, he went back home the next day, and he said that Eduardo came to his mom's house, a couple of days later or whatever, to offer him the contract to be a Menudo. Now, he said when Eduardo showed up at the house, Roy said he ran in his closet and he hid. And again, of course, in hindsight, the red flag, right? In hindsight, but the mama didn't think nothing of it. And his brother was like, I saw him. You know what, Tracy? It might work, but it's just, to me, it's still too close to the word. You put a G on it, it's still too close to the word. Y'all know what the word is. I think I was listening to somebody and they were saying ape. I don't know. But I just wish I could say the word. Forget all that, I just wish I could say it, because again, it is just so I just feel like it just needs to be that blunt. You know what I'm saying? But anyway, he hid in the closet, but of course the mother didn't think anything of it, and she signed the contract. And then I wrote in my notes what I already told you guys. Wouldn't let the parents travel. um Roy eventually told his brother that he would rather die than be a part of Menudo. But again, his brother was younger than him. I mean, if he's 14, you telling your brother who's 10 or whatever, like, again, it just doesn't, these are kids. They don't understand. Okay. Roy was paying the bills. Before it was over with, Roy said that throughout his life, because of his experiences with Eduardo, that he attempted to unalive himself 5 times. Altogether, he has made 5 different attempts. Um, he has ultimately become a born again Christian, and he's given his life to Christ. And so he says that he believes that that's why it was never successful, because God always had a plan for him. And he believes that God's mission for him now is to get justice for all of the kids that may have been a victim of Eduardo. So, and that's why I say I think the whole premise of this show originally was to follow Roy's journey as he tried to put together enough evidence to bring Eduardo to trial. That is what I believe. That is my opinion. And I feel like they stumbled into the Menendez brothers and they spliced Menendez in there. And if you guys saw it, for those of you that saw it, do you understand where I'm coming from with that? I know Jessica saw it, Miss Bynum saw it, um, Natalie saw it. So for those of you that saw the whole documentary, do y'all see what I mean? That it looks like, it seems like it was Roy's story, and then he, in telling his story, he told them about Menendez, his experience with Menendez, and then they were like, "Oh shit, yeah, that's okay." Natalie says she feels that way too. Okay, yeah, okay. Because when the Menendez stuff was going on, Roy was doing his own thing. Like after he left Menudo, well, during his time in Menudo, he started using drugs. When he got kicked out of Menudo, he he said he went down to Brazil and he was just high and strung out and dealing with the aftermath of the 3 years of basically being Eduardo's sex slave. And again, I'm not saying that to be light. I mean, he really was this man's sex slave. That's how he was treated. Um, and so he said, I knew about the Menendez, but it didn't. And even if honestly, I don't, in that climate in the early 1980s, I honestly don't think it would have changed anything. I think it changes things now because people look at it differently now. But in the early 80s, I don't think it would have changed anything. And I could be wrong, but I just think they would have discredited him. They would have talked about him being on drugs. They would have talked about, oh, you're just mad because you got fired from Menudo. You're making these things up. Oh, but your mother, didn't your mother make money? Didn't you live? You know what I mean? I really think, I don't think it would have changed at that time. But that's just my opinion. Um, they talked about the Menendez brothers at the beginning of episode 1, but they didn't talk about a lot about the connection. But anyway, okay. Roy did not tell his mother anything about what happened to him until he was an adult. And I think his mama is looking for Eduardo. And I'm not saying that to be funny. I mean dead ass. Like his mama was like, if I ever see him on the streets, he ain't walking away. Now the mama live in Florida now. The mama don't live in Puerto Rico no more. And Eduardo lives in Puerto Rico. But the mama was like, if I see him, he's not walking away. And I think she mean it. His mama looked like she mean that. Okay. All right, I said that. He started using drugs until he became a born again Christian, until he found Jesus. Um, okay, so that was episode 1. Episode 1 ended with us finding out about the RCA $30 million deal, and that Jose Menendez was the president of RCA at that time. That's where episode 1 ends. So episode 2 is where we get, and this is what you were talking about, Xavier, where we get more information about what happened with the Menendez brothers. Okay. Now, again, Eduardo talks about how he went to the Menendez house one time when he was a kid, when he was with Menudo. He went to the Menendez house and he remembers seeing the brothers. He remembers seeing them, and he described the fact that they looked sad and that he felt a negative energy in the house. And we don't get all the details until episode 3, but he keeps alluding to this night he spent at the Menendez house. He alludes to it. Okay. So then we see where I guess it will be their cousin and their aunt, are talking about what they remember. And again, you'll remember things in hindsight that you didn't see it the same way when it happened. And especially for the cousin, because she was a kid, right? She was younger, I think she's older than them, than the Menendez brothers, but again, she wasn't grown. And the aunt is the sister to Kitty, who was the Menendez brothers' mom. So this is their aunt on their mother's side. And they talked about remembering examples of the father putting the boys to bed, and how the father would be in their room for hours with them. And then he would come out and say, oh, or he would say, go to your room, because they did something they weren't supposed to do. And he would take them to their room and we would be in there with them for hours, and then he come out and say, oh, he's not coming out, he doesn't feel good, or oh, he's asleep, or whatever. And they were like, in the moment, of course, I never understood what the hell, what why are you in there for 2 or 3 hours, but I never thought of it in the way, like, I mean, of course, it was you never fathomed what was going on. I think probably the most horrific example was they said they remembered Lyle and Eric. I think it was, again, I get them mixed up, y'all. So one of the brothers would throw fits about lemons. Had to have a lemon. And she said it wasn't in a bratty way. It was almost in a desperate way. Like, I need a lemon. I have to have a lemon. And lemon and ketchup. They were desperate. They would drown their food in ketchup. They would cry. They would have a tantrum if they couldn't get a lemon. And she said, we found out later on, I think it was during the trial, they testified that the taste of lemon, they were forced to swallow the semen, and that the taste of lemon and ketchup would get that taste out of their mouth. So they said they're listening to them testify about this, and now they're connecting it to when they were kids. Like, oh my gosh, we remember them throwing fits about needing lemons or ketchup, and now they're making this connection. Ugh. Right. And again, I keep, that's why I said it's very explicit, you guys. Until I saw it, my mind was that the brothers are why they needed to be after all of their families' accounts. Like, how did we all miss this? Yeah. Um. So, and again, I apologize, you guys. One of the brothers in the interview explained that 5 days what before they did what they did to their parents, that's when they found out that their mother knew the whole time. He said, I was growing up my whole life thinking my mother never knew what my father was doing to me, and thinking I'm enduring all of this. I'm taking all of this abuse because I'm protecting my mother. Because he always threatened that if I ever said anything, then he would hurt the family. He would unalive the family. He would unalive me, and he would unalive the family. And so I always felt like I'm taking this to protect the family. And then for him to find out 5 days before they did what they did to their parents, not only did his mother know, but his mother protected the father his whole life. That was the trigger. And if you listen to the account, their mother was shot in the face. I mean, she was shot multiple times, but one of those shots was in dead smack in her face with a sawed-off shotgun. The father was one of the shots to him was in the back of the head, but the mother dead to her face. And I think that was very intentional. Well, obviously it was intentional, but you know what I'm saying. Because again, the question is, well, what, you guys have been taking it your whole life. What happened in that moment? Y'all were grown in, like Lyle was in college. The oldest one, I think Eric is the oldest one. Eric was in college. The youngest one had just turned 18. Like, why now? But that was the trigger that they found out, wait a minute, this has been happening my whole life. And I'm thinking I'm protecting you, and you knew. And you didn't protect me. And again, I just want to reiterate for those of you that are coming in late or you didn't watch the documentary, they never, well, I could say they never, once they got arrested, they never denied the fact that they did it. They were just saying, this is why we did it. It wasn't because we were spoiled rich kids that just wanted to, live a playboy lifestyle, even though that's what they did after the parents died. They was out there living la vida loca. But again, I mean, that's what they were doing. but they didn't. That wasn't their motive, and I don't believe that was. Now I don't. Now back then I did. I ain't gonna lie, but now I don't believe it. What I don't understand is if he abused the children, why wouldn't he abuse the wife? Well, it's two different types of abuse. You mean sexually or physically? Because everybody that's a sexual predator doesn't mean that they're a physical predator. I feel like he probably intimidated the wife. They said that on top of the accusations of the sexual accusations, they said that he was very abusive, verbally abusive to the boys. They said he was verbally abusive to the boys and even physically abusive to the boys. And he may have been physically abusive to the wife. I don't know. I've never, and I think it's never been explored, honestly. Um, in my recollection, I watched a lot of stuff on the Menendez brothers when years and years ago, so I don't remember everything. I know it didn't come up in this documentary. It didn't come up in this documentary about the wife. Not a lot of information, but I don't think anybody ever really explored the wife's relationship with the husband. I don't remember that ever being a conversation. You know what I'm saying? But maybe if they asked the right questions to the right people, maybe they would find evidence that he was abusive to her. But I've never heard that I can remember. But that's a good question though, Tracy. That's a good question. They were still getting abused in their adulthood. They absolutely were. They absolutely were. Okay. Um okay. Now, here's where we get a little bit more into the Menudo thing. So, the father was obsessed with Menudo, and during the time that Menudo was signed to RCA, he would help pick new members of the group. Again, why is this grown ass man picking 13 and 14-year-olds? But okay. And that he would fly around and go to their concerts all over the country. He would fly around and go to their concerts. Okay. So the photojournalist who was working for I believe it was the LA Times, he was the one that said, we know the pathology of an abuser is that there usually isn't just one victim. So his thing was the key to helping the brothers is that we have to find more victims. There has to be more kids out here that he violated. And that was the question of them trying to find it, that connection. So the first inkling that there was something is a man by the name of Morales. I believe his name is Morales. He was a photojournalist, and he actually opened up. He when Menudo first came to America, he actually had the foresight. He knew how big Menudo was, and he had the foresight that he opened up a shop to sell Menudo paraphernalia in New York. He said that he went over to Puerto Rico and he bought $10,000 worth of paraphernalia. He came back, opened up his shop. He said it was sold out in 1 week. He went back to Puerto Rico. This time he bought $20,000 worth of Menudo paraphernalia and it sold out within a week. And at that time, then he became an official licensed vendor for Menudo, and he opened up a permanent store that sold Menudo paraphernalia until he voluntarily shut his store down. We're going to get to the end of that story. Okay. So, Atkinson, that's a good point. L. Atkinson said those boys were locked up for a lot of reasons. One being that they were close to the industry and probably knew and saw more things regarding the assault, and kids and behind bars was a way to keep it quiet. We know stories from the industry, especially again, going back to pre Me Too and pre, Harvey Weinstein and Jeffrey Epstein and all these different things. Um, there's 78 people in the chat. If you guys have not already, if you could please hit that like button. This video is probably not going to be monetized or limited monetization, which is fine. I understand that with the subject matter, and that's fine. But please like the buttons. I mean, hit the like button so people know we here and they can join the conversation. I think at the end of this, I'm going to drop the link if anybody wants to come up and be careful in your words. But if you want to just come up and just talk a little bit, I think I'll drop the link if you guys want to join in. Um, and a lot of you have watched the documentary and you may have some things you want to share, or if something I forgot to mention or whatever. It was a lot of information. Donations are not required, but they are accepted, so you can always do that as well. Oh, wait a minute, hold on. Speaking of which, somebody sent me a super chat the other day. Oh, Pam said she fell asleep, child. I did get a super chat, I mean a cash app the other day, so I want to acknowledge that. I did acknowledge L Long. Thank you, my love. And then I don't like calling people's government names, but I am going to say thank you, Miss Shaw. I'm gonna just say Miss Shaw. If you're here, you know who I am when you catching this in the replay. Thank you, Miss Shaw. Okay, I won't say your whole government name, but Okay. Um. Okay, so he owned the shop. He owned the Menudo shop for 9 years. Now he said that he started hearing rumors. I remember Menudo being my best friend, who she'll probably hear this in about a year because she's about she's about a year behind, but she watches all my videos. She would, oh my gosh, she loved Menudo. Oh, she loved Menudo. Um, he started hearing the rumors about Eduardo Diaz violating the boys, and he did an investigation. And in his investigation, he found that there was a legitimate reason to believe that Eduardo Diaz was violating the boys, right? So what he did was he went to the authorities in Puerto Rico, but nothing happened. He went to the authorities in Puerto Rico, nothing happened. Eduardo was too powerful. Menudo was too important to and I mean, taking away everything else, the economy of the country, right? So he ended up going on Christina, who we know was like the Oprah Winfrey. If you remember Christina from the talk show era, she was the Puerto Rican Oprah Winfrey. She was the Latin America Puerto Rico. I mean, Oprah Winfrey, right? Christina was the place to go, right? So he went to the show to tell his story, to try to get the authorities, to get pressure on the authorities. The police showed up to arrest him even before he said anything. Before he had a chance to tell the story, the police showed up to arrest him. Now, this was during the live show, so they showed clips of this. You saw where she tells him, hey, the police are here. The police are here to talk to you. So once they stopped filming, he's like, I didn't do anything wrong. I didn't break any laws. So he's talking to the police. And there were some attorneys in the audience. It wasn't even his personal attorney. There were attorneys in the audience that were like, wait, whoa, whoa, whoa. What do you mean? What are you here to arrest him about? Like, why are you here to arrest him? And they were like, oh, well, they were like, so then once the attorneys were like, wait a minute, do you have an arrest warrant? Like, what are you charging him with? Then they were like, oh no, we're not here to arrest him. We just want to talk to him. We just want to hear his story. And so Morales was like, okay, this is what I've been wanting. He went to the police station to talk to them. He said, this is what I've been wanting. I've been wanting to tell the story, and I've been wanting somebody to listen, and I've been wanting y'all to do something. So he gets to the police station, and once he gets to the police station, they say, Eduardo Diaz wants to file charges against you for defamation. Now, even with that, defamation isn't a criminal act, it's a civil act. So they were like, well, he was like, well, okay, fine. Like, I'll wait. Like, he wasn't going anywhere. He was like, well, I'm waiting for him. And they said that he waited for Diaz to show up to file this police report against him. And he never showed up. So finally, Morales was like, I ain't about to sit here all day. I'm gone. And they said as soon as he left, Diaz had been waiting across the street the whole time. And as soon as he left, then Diaz showed up, filed the report. And so then they put out a warrant for Morales' arrest, saying he fled the scene. We have an arrest warrant for him. Is that not crazy? Is that not crazy? And of course, now his name is Mud. They made him out to be this crazy dude, this crazy guy, that was making up this stuff and trying to bring down Diaz, trying to bring Eduardo Diaz down. Uh, Let me make sure I got all that right. It was a lot of layers to that child. And after this, everybody was too afraid to talk. After they saw, this was in Puerto Rico. After they saw all of the different, what happened to Morales, the boys who were willing to come forward, now they were afraid to talk, which is, of course, what the whole point was, to scare anybody about coming forward. Um, Morales said after that he went back to New York. He closed down his store. He said he didn't even sell any. He said he had a basement full of merchandise. He said he didn't even sell any of that merchandise. He said he cleaned out the store, he cleaned out his basement, he threw everything away. He closed his store and basically walked away from Menudo after that, because he had actually started working for Menudo and everything else. He became like their official photographer at one point in time and all of that. So he walked away. Okay. Now, Ray Reyes. Ray Reyes was a former member of Menudo. During the time that they were filming this, Ray passed away. He was 51 years old and he passed away. It is believed that he was actually working on a book where he was going to talk about his experiences in Menudo as it related to being abused by Eduardo, right? Edgoro. It's a G in it. Edgoro. It's not Eduardo. Edgoro. But he passed away before that. He also was the one that said that Edgardo's mother knew that he was violating those boys, that she knew and she was complicit in it. This is when we found out that Eduardo is still alive, because Eduardo came to the damn funeral. And they said that they couldn't believe that he had and this is in 2021, right? They said they couldn't believe that he had the audacity to show up. He actually showed up at this young man's funeral, and he said he was just there to pay his respects. There were other former members of Menudo there as well. Now Roy didn't go. Roy didn't go. He said he had his own reasons for why he didn't go. Part of it was he said he just wasn't ready. He said he didn't even want to chance running into Eduardo. So because the funeral was in Puerto Rico, he said he didn't even want to chance it. So that was part of his reason for not going. Um, Sounds like that Eduardo guy's buying a lot of. Oh, he definitely. I mean, the man made millions. He made millions. Now I don't know how much money he got now. But in the heyday of Menudo, I mean, because he didn't listen. Y'all go back and look at the documentary that I did. The links are in the description box. We talk about the money and how those boys weren't making no money and how he was basically. I mean, they were making for if you're poor, anything is better than nothing. But they were not making anywhere close to what they should have been making. Anyway. Sorry. All right. Child. Child, we only in part two, honey. We ain't even in part three yet. We almost done with part two. So Raul, who's Roy's brother, Ray, the one that passed away. So we see Roy meet up with Raul in Florida. Here's where it gets deep, y'all. This this gets deep. Ray, who is the one that passed away, his brother Raul was younger than him. And Raul was hanging around the group. He even recorded some music, and he always thought that as soon as he became of age, he would be in Menudo, and it was his dream. He wanted to be a part of Menudo, right? Roy comes in, and Roy never even had to traditionally audition. Roy didn't have to audition. Remember, Roy was picked by Eduardo that day he came to the studio and sorry, y'all, my internet is acting up. And was taken to Eduardo's mother's house and violated. And then he went and got his mother to sign the contract, and he was in the group. So the rest of the group is side-eyeing Roy from day one. They're looking at him like, where you come from? You never even auditioned. We don't know who you are. How did all of a sudden you become a member of the group? Right? So they were already, so Roy had it bad. One, because he was basically being used as Eduardo's personal ex-slave, and the boys treated him really bad. They never fully accepted him. Well, not never, but it was really hard because they looked at him as, well, where did you come from? This is on Peacock. This is on Peacock. But the other documentary is on HBO. And I remember when I reviewed the HBO documentary, I remember them talking about Roy and how a lot of the boys didn't accept Roy because they felt like Roy was getting favoritism. Because again, they're kids, y'all. They don't see it they don't understand it from an adult point of view. They think that he's getting this favoritism from Eduardo because he was being forced to sleep in Eduardo's room every night. He was forced to do certain things, and from the outside looking in, it looked like, oh, he's his favorite. Oh, he gets to get away with this. Oh, he eats better than us. Oh, he gets to get certain, certain privileges, not understanding that he was being forced into this situation and he was being violated as a 14-year-old boy night after night after night. You see what I'm saying? So the boys were like looking at him like, who is this? Where he come from? Well, Raul felt that way because Raul felt like, you took my spot. I was supposed to be next. I've been waiting. What up, Pam? Your first lunchbox was Menudo? Oh my goodness. Now you didn't know who they were though. Now it was just on sale. I ain't fooling with you, Pam. So they went to so Raul felt some kind of way, like, you didn't came in and took my spot. You didn't even have to audition. My brother's already in the group. I'm supposed to, I'm supposed to be the one. It's supposed to be me. But what happened was his brother Ray, the one that passed away, told him, you don't want to be a part of this. Because remember, allegedly, Ray was violated as well. He told his brother, you don't want to be a part of this. And Raul and Roy had a moment where Raul said to him, he said, I'm sorry for the way that I treated you because as a kid, what I saw was you took my spot. You took my place. You took what I've been working for. And he said, but what you did was you saved me. It was a moment, y'all. I said, oh, shit. Like those two grown ass men sitting there crying. And, Roy was like, listen, I get it. Like, I understand. Like, I get it. You guys thought that this was, I get it, but he was like, you actually saved me. You actually saved me. So anyway, right, Miss Bonham, it's how you have to really look at this through the kids' lens. And you also, like I was saying at the beginning of this, you got to look through this from a 1980s lens as well. We're looking at this through a 2023 lens, post Me Too, post Bill Cosby, post Harvey Weinstein and Epstein and all these other people, where we realize, oh my gosh, these things were going on. But when you look at it from that 1980s, that's why I said, I don't think even if Roy had come forward while the Menendez brothers were on trial, I don't think it would have helped then. I'm hoping it'll help now, but I don't think it would have helped then. They just would have discredited him. They would have called him a liar, you're a drug addict, and you're just mad you got fired from the group. Because that's the other thing that Eduardo would do. Eduardo would technically fire you from the group. So what's the thing that people are going to always say? Oh, you're just disgruntled because you were making all of this money and you had all of this fame and Eduardo fired you and now you're just mad. You're just trying to get back at him. You know what I'm saying? Like that's that mentality that groomer that they use. So that's gonna always be the, oh, you're just mad, you're hurt, you're mad. You know what I'm saying? Um, a lot of the members thought that this relationship was consensual because again, they're kids. They're not thinking that this 14-year-old little boy really ain't trying to be sleeping in this grown ass man's bed every night. They're looking at it like, oh, well, it was consensual. All right, I think that's part 3. Hold on, let me make sure I got it all. Hold on. Thought the relationship was consensual. Other members, yeah, the other members really didn't like Roy because they thought he had favor. And if you go back and look at my reviews or go back and look at the documentary on HBO, they talk about that. They talk about, one of the members talks about how he knocked on Eduardo's door one day, and Eduardo opened up the door, and Roy was in his room in a towel. And he said that's when he first realized that something was going on between Roy and Eduardo. But again, he's a kid, and he was like, oh, see, that's why he gets to do blah 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 blah. But we're gonna get to it. We about to get into it. So here's part 3. In part 3, we see once again we're at Christina, aka the Puerto Rican Oprah, and a former member of the group by the name of Ralphie is on there saying that when he was a member of Menudo, he was abused and that he witnessed it. He knew it happened. His father was also saying, look, my son told me this, that, and the other. Because, and this was also in my other review. It's in the description box for this video. I put it's 4 videos. The links are in the description box. So yeah, I reviewed the HBO one, and it's called Menudo Forever. I reviewed that back in the fall, and it's in the description box for this video. I can drop the links in the chat before we get out of here. I'll drop the links in the chat, but it's in the description box for this video. His father, so it was like you know how the Oprah used to have the panels, like 5 or 6 people on there. So Eduardo was there to, I guess, defend himself. Ralphie was there, his dad was there, and the members of Menudo were in the audience, right? Ray, the one who no, not Ray, not Ray. Um, Ash, they called him Ash. Ash, who we talked to in a few minutes. Where's Ash? Ash is later on in this episode, but Ash was in the audience at the time. So again, this is the second instance of somebody speaking up. So the first one was Morales, the photographer. The second one was Ralphie, him and his father. But what did they do? Oh, you're just mad you got fired from the group, because Ralphie's dad was saying he was demanding to travel with his son. He was like, nah, I'm gonna be there. So he was demanding to travel with his son, and also he was demanding more money. So they turned it into, oh, you just want money, you just want money. They made it a money thing, and he was like, no, it's not about the fact that I want more money for no reason. I want more money because you owe my son money. Like, you're not paying him what he should be getting paid. So anyway, so of course they made it seem like, oh, he just, you know. So again, they discredited Ralphie, but now they said now Eduardo became a lot more careful. He wasn't as willy-nilly about what he was doing because there were more people looking at him than before. So they said after that, he did become a little more careful. In walks, so the next person we meet is Papo Gelli. So let me rewind a little bit. Roy is going around to all of these different people who he knows spoke up in the past or who were there and witnessed certain things, because he's trying to build a case against Eduardo. And I'm going to tell y'all how this connects to Bill Cosby in a minute, too. Remind me to bring y'all the Bill Cosby connection in a minute. Remind me. When I get to the end of this, say, Really B, you forgot to tell us about the Bill Cosby connection, because when I get to the end, I'm going to make the connection. So Papa, so during his conversations with all of these people, he's saying, hey, I'm going to file charges against Eduardo. Will you testify? Will you be a witness? Will you cooperate with the investigation? So that's why he's going through meeting all of these people. So we get to Papo Gelli. Papo Gelli was a producer, a songwriter. He started off as a studio musician for Menudo, and then he became part of the band and he traveled with them. He said that he witnessed suspicious behavior, but again, he didn't see specifically certain things. He said that Eduardo always had a boy sleeping in his room. He said that he did witness the verbal abuse, though. He witnessed um, the verbal abuse and the humiliation. If the boys missed a step, if the boys missed a note, they said that he was very, very physical and very verbally abusive. That also was talked about in the documentary. So that's other people said the same thing. Roy tells the story again, y'all. This is very graphic. So if you don't want to hear it, you know, but this is very graphic. Roy tells the story, and they showed the clip of when they were on the Phil Donahue show. And Phil Donahue went to Roy because not all of the boys could speak English. A lot of the boys just spoke Spanish. So when it came to interviews and stuff, there were only specific boys that could talk when they were doing English interviews, English speaking interviews. And Phil Donahue went over to Roy to talk to him, to ask him questions, and he froze. And they showed the clip. You see the look on his face. He said, I just froze. He said, I was just overwhelmed in that moment and I just froze. I couldn't answer him and I didn't have anything to say. And you saw that Phil Donahue asked him like 2 or 3 questions and he was just standing there like he was just like lost. So he said that later on that day, he said, Eduardo said, you embarrassed us. He said, you embarrassed us. And he proceeded to beat him up. He beat him. This is Roy's version of the story. He proceeded to physically assault him. He beat him, said he punched him, he kicked him, he did all of these things. He said that night he made him sleep in the bathroom with no clothes. He was naked. He said he wasn't even a towel in the bathroom. He said the towel wasn't even a towel in the bathroom. He said, and at about 5 o'clock that morning, Eduardo came in and got him. Now, this is what Roy said. Eduardo said to him. He said, come on and give me some ass. Right? He said, and then he proceeded to assault him. After he had beat him up all night, made him sleep on the floor with naked, then he assaulted him. He said that he continued to assault, punch him and slap him while he was violating him. I'm trying to be as PC with these words, but and again, I want to be, I wish I could be very raw because I just think people need to understand the brutality of what this young man went through. Okay. Now, mind you, he was with the group for 3 years, from 83 to 86. So this was 3 years that he went through this. Now I need y'all to hear what Papo Gelli said. I need y'all to hear what Papo Gelli said. Papo Gelli said, more band members need to come forward. He said, and I'm paraphrasing because I don't remember the exact words he used, but he said, more band members need to come forward. He said, it would really help if the band members who have, worldwide notoriety would tell their story. And what that said to me, this is me. This is my interpretation of what Papo Gelli was saying. What that said to really be was, Ricky Martin, come forward. That's what I heard. That's what I heard. I heard Ricky. Because honestly, when you think of alumni from Menudo, Ricky Martin really is the most famous. There's a few others that had decent careers after Menudo, but Ricky Martin, he never said, Xavier, he never said Ricky Martin's name, and I'm not saying Ricky Martin was a victim. I'm saying at the very least, Ricky Martin can corroborate some things that he saw. I'm not saying he's a victim. That is not what I'm saying. But Ricky Martin was a member of the group while Roy was a member of the group. And he can maybe corroborate some of what Roy is saying happened. And because Ricky Martin is this international superstar, it may hold some weight. And I think that's what Papa Gelly is saying. Like, listen, you're the most famous alumni. You are worldwide famous. If you put your stamp on this, it may push something to happen. I think that's what he was saying. What's up, Peace? So anyway, because even in the Menudo Forever documentary, Ricky Martin did not participate. A lot of other former members of Menudo, he didn't participate at all. So anyway, and he's not obligated. Well, I should say, I mean, legally he's not obligated, but if he saw something, I think he should say something. But when I get to the end of this, and I know I've been talking for a long time, I didn't mean to talk this long, but there's a lot of information. We almost done, y'all. We're in part 3. We almost done. Okay. Here's where we get to the story of Menendez. Here is how this is Roy's story and how he's connected to Jose Menendez. Y'all ready? He met Jose Menendez one night. He was with Eduardo. They were in a limo. They were going to Eduardo's house in New Jersey. This is when Menudo was in New York. I didn't get to the Bill Cosby connection yet. That's right at the end, at the very, very end, Tracy. At the very, very end. We almost at the end, child. We almost at the end. The I'm sorry, they were in a limo. This is prior to them signing with RCA. That's important to the story. They're in a limo. They're on their way. They go to the Menendez house for dinner. He said he went in the house. He said he saw the boys. He saw he saw Lyle and Eric. I mean, they didn't play together or nothing, but he said he saw them when he went in the house. They went into the dining room to eat dinner. They gave him some wine. He didn't want the wine. They made him drink the wine anyway. He said he drank the wine, and he said that's when things started getting fuzzy. He said that he feels like they drug him. Either they drug him or that might have been stronger than wine because he was at this time 14, 15 years old. So, I mean, it could have very easily just been a really, really, really potent drink. Or it could have been, I'm not discrediting his story, right? He said that it was very fuzzy after that. He said he remembers being walked down a long hallway, going into a room, and he remembers parts of the assault. He said Jose Menendez assaulted him. He said that he remembers waking up in the hotel room in a lot of pain. He said it was unbearable pain. Unbearable pain. And he was bleeding a lot. He was bleeding a lot. And again, y'all know where he was bleeding from. Y'all know where the pain was coming from, okay? He said that Eduardo even told him, you'll be all right. The bleeding will stop eventually, and you'll be as good as new, right? Basically, you'll be good in a couple of days. And he just talked about how much blood there was and how painful it was. A week later is when Menudo signed a $30 million deal with RCA. Now, y'all draw your own conclusions from that. Yeah, Ricky did have a situation with his nephew last year. That's true. That's true. And I remember we talked about that. Yeah. He said that Eduardo Diaz and Jose Menendez, they were friends. They were confidants. They were friends. Now, let me put a pin in that. For those of you who were here or you watched the documentary on HBO, and I didn't have time to go back and look at it last night because by the time I looked at these 3 episodes, y'all, I couldn't do no more. I just couldn't do no more. But I'm going to go back and watch it because I don't know which episode. I'll probably just go watch my reviews. I don't know which episode it was, but they talked. It was probably It was probably the later episodes. I would say episode 3, because it was the later episodes when they talked about how not only some of the former members, because some of the former members have come forward. I think these documentaries overlapped. If I looked at the dates, I believe they probably overlapped, because some of the former members have come forward, and said that they were violated or they witnessed things or whatever. But he talked about in the, I think it was like part 3 of the Menudo Forever documentary, they talked about not only did Eduardo violate them, but that they said record execs. They never said the name, but they said record execs and other members of his entourage, of Eduardo's entourage, also, thank you, Ruru, also violated them. They talked about that. Now, they didn't say Menendez's name, but they said record execs. They said people from the record company. So I'm wondering if they were also talking about Menendez, right? Because they said record execs. Okay. Okay. So then Roy went on to say, listen, I understand why the boys did what they did, because I wanted to unalive Diaz and myself. So I know my experience with Diaz. I wanted to unalive him. So I understand if that was their father and their father violated them the way he violated me that night, I absolutely understand why they did what they did. Okay. So let's talk about, and this is where Pam comes in. Pam did a really good job of explaining this on her channel, in her video she did last week on Menendez. So if you want more of the legal aspect, go check out Pam's video. Tracy, do me a favor, if you can, or one of my mods, can you drop Pam's the link in the chat for the people to go find Pam's video? But so here's how this is connected to the Menendez brothers. Once Roy put Menendez's name in it, the woman that he was talking to connected him with the guy that's been investigating and trying to find a link and trying to find other victims for Menendez, right? That's how they connected. Diaz is talking to that journalist, right? The journalist or the investigator, he reaches out to Menendez's attorneys and says, hey, I have a potential, thank you, the link is in the chat, you guys. I have a potential connection. So the Menendez brothers are out of appeals. They cannot appeal. They've exhausted their appeals for their conviction. At this point, the only relief they have is either, the governor commute them or pardon them, or they could do what's called a habeas petition based on new evidence. So the argument that their attorney is making is this is new evidence that shows a pattern that Menendez did violate other people, which gives credibility to Eric and Lyle's account of what happened. And again, they're not asking that they be found necessarily innocent. They said, listen, we did it, but they're saying we did it with a defense, so it should be manslaughter and not murder one, because murder one, they ain't never getting out of jail. Ever getting out of jail. But manslaughter, they would already be out of jail, because the maximum sentence that they would have gotten in 1993, I think, was their second trial. The maximum that they would have gotten at that time was 20 years or 22 years. They've already been in jail for 30 years. So essentially, if a judge listens to their petition and agrees that this was enough new evidence that would have given them a self-defense, a defense that they could corroborate, then they would have possibly gotten manslaughter versus murder, which means that they have served their sentence. Time served, you can go home. That's essentially what and again, if you want a more technical breakdown, the link is in the chat so you can hear what Pam, and Pam actually read through the petition, and so it gets more into the details. Okay, so that is what's going on with the Menendez case. The lawyer Because in at the end of the documentary, the lawyer is like, well, I have to corroborate his story. I have to get the details of his story. I have to go and make sure that he was in New York at the time he said he was, that Menendez was there. Like I have to verify enough of the story that I believe it. He did that. He believes Roy's story. He's filed the petition. Right? So that is how Menudo is connected to the Menendez brothers, and how possibly it could possibly help their case, and maybe they'll come home. Also, I think for a lot of people, it just not justifies. It corroborates what the Menendez said, and for a lot of people who didn't believe Menendez are now like, oh, maybe they're telling the truth. Oh, wait a minute, maybe their father did do this. You see what I'm saying? Um, okay, Miss Bonham. All right, man, connecting those dots. So now here's where Bill Cosby is connected. Y'all ready for the Bill Cosby connection? Pam, I didn't even, if you still here, girl, I didn't even have a chance to talk to you about this one. Here's the Bill Cosby connection. So, Roy Rosello, who his name's been on the screen the whole time. I understand manslaughter for the father, but you don't see it. You don't see it for the mother. I understand she should have protected them, but the mother didn't touch them herself. Yeah, but she the fact that she knew about it the whole time and protected him and defended him. She's a accessory. She's an accessory after the fact, or actually, she's an accessory during the fact. Once she found out the first time and she didn't do anything to stop it, or I mean, it's like if me and you walk into a bank, you rob the bank, I drive the getaway car. I didn't know you were gonna rob the bank before we walked in, but I knew when I decided to drive the getaway car, that I was now a part of the crime. I'm an accessory. So if if I'm an attorney, that's the argument I make. Yeah, she didn't touch them, but she knew what was going on, and she didn't defend it. Thank you, Miss Bynum. Thank you, my love. Okay, here's the connection now. And Roy Rosello, he has actually now filed criminal charges. He has filed a complaint, an official complaint in Los Angeles. He went to Los Angeles and he filed the report in Los Angeles, the police report against Eduardo. People might say, oh, why did he file it in Los Angeles? Why didn't he file it in San Juan? Why didn't he file it in Puerto Rico? He knows that Eduardo lives in Puerto Rico. He said, well, I was violated. I suffered a lot in California. A lot of what happened to me happened in Los Angeles. Now, here's my Matlock theory. Now, y'all know I don't have nobody's law degree. I got my law degree from Law and Order University by way of Matlock. Well, no, Law and Order Law School by way of Matlock University. I ain't said that in a while. I messed it up. But y'all know what I'm saying. Here's the connection. Let me just say this before I forget. November 2022, he officially filed charges. So this is new. It's been 6 months since he's filed charges. He filed in November 2022. No criminal charges have been filed against Eduardo yet. However, there is an ongoing investigation. Now, here's the connection. If you guys, those of you who've been with me, if you go back and you look at when we talked about Let's Talk About Bill Cosby, remember that documentary we broke down? I think that was 3 parts too, where they broke down the whole Bill Cosby case. They go all the way back to the beginning of his career, and they break down every instance of Bill Cosby. That new charge against Bill Cosby, the woman that said she was violated in 1969, that's in the documentary. All of that. Remember we talked about that? Okay. Fast forward to a couple of Bill Cosby's alleged victims. One of the sidebars that has come out of the Bill Cosby case that a lot of people aren't talking about is a lot of his alleged victims could not do anything. They could not file criminal charges. They could not sue or whatever because the statute, well, they could sue, but they couldn't file criminal charges because the statute of limitations was up. And y'all know that for a lot of cases, there's a statute of limitations. You only have a certain amount of time to file charges. If somebody robs you, if somebody does certain things, after that time period, you have no legal remedy. So a lot of women who allegedly were violated by Bill Cosby in the 1980s or the 1990s, by 2000, the statute of limitations was up. And when they went to the police to say, hey, this happened to me in 1986, this happened to me in 1990, the police were like, I'm sorry, this is outside of the statute of limitations. There is nothing we can do. Y'all with me? And Pam, if you in the chat, if I'm saying it wrong, work with me. Thank you, Miss Carter. Thank you. Now, with that being said, I keep saying a lot. In the documentary, there were at least two women that I remember. They were working towards changing the law. And I know for a fact that in the state of California, one of the women who alleged that she was violated by one of the few black victims, if I'm going to be real and call a thing, one of the few black victims said that Bill Cosby, she said she was violated at Palm Springs. No, not Palm Springs, because that's in Nevada. It's Palm Springs in California. Anyway, she was violated in California. Let me just go there. She has been able to get the law changed. She worked and they got the law changed in California. There is no longer a statute of limitations in the state of California on sexual assault. And I believe that is why Roy filed in California, because the statute of limitations are probably expired in Puerto Rico, depending on what the law is in Puerto Rico. But because he can probably establish that something happened to him in LA, he can file in LA, because in California, there's no statute of limitations. Y'all see the connection to Bill Cosby? This woman, who's an alleged victim of Bill Cosby, got the law changed in California, no statute of limitations. I believe that's why Roy filed in California, because there's no statute of limitations. He can go back to 1982, 1983, 1986, 1987. He said he was with Menudo for 3 years. He can go back 30 years because there's no statute of limitations. And that's Palm Springs is in California. Thank you, Auntie Didi. So it was Palm Springs. Thank you. So she alleged that she was violated in Palm Springs, because I was trying to make sure I remembered everything correctly, and that she got the law changed in California. And it's been a couple of other states that have changed the law as well, but I remember specifically California because I remember her, and she was one of the women that worked on getting that bill passed. They get into it in a documentary of what Congresswoman sponsored it and how they were able to get the bill passed. I said, look at Bill Cosby all up in this. See how they be connecting these? I be connecting dots. I be working hard for y'all over here. I be connecting dots and stuff. We done connected to Menendez, to Menudo, Bill Cosby. That makes sense with the Danny Masterson case. No limit on sexual. There you go. That's it. Now I'm gonna drop the link for a few minutes. We've already been here a long time, y'all. But I am going. A lot of y'all saw the documentary. A lot of y'all might have an opinion. I'm gonna drop the link if anybody wants to come up and share their opinion or say what needs to be said. Please just be careful in your words. I know YouTube don't like certain things. The video probably already gonna be it's gonna have limited monetization on it, but that's okay, y'all. That's okay. But just be careful in your wording when you come up. You do not have to show your face, but I just need to verify before I bring you on that you are a real person. But I got about 15 minutes. We've been on here for an hour and 45 minutes, so I'll give you guys about 15 minutes if anybody wants to come up. Give me a quick second, y'all. I'm gonna run to the ladies' room real quick. Hold on. Sorry about that, y'all. What's up, watermelon sugar? Hey, my love. There have been commercials regarding victims of SA can file charges because there's no statute of limitations in sexual assault. Okay. The Danny Masson case was specific, though. There had to be guilty verdicts for at least two victims for him to face consequence. Now I need to add Harvey Weinstein and Robert, and you have hit almost all the major right. If I connect all the dots, child. And I think I've reviewed documentaries on everybody except for Jeffrey Epstein. Well, I haven't done Harvey Weinstein either. I don't know. But yeah, so that's the breakdown. That's the connection. And Pam is actually going to follow on her channel. She's actually going to follow the writ of, I believe it's a writ of habeas petition. So she's following that on her channel, the legal piece with Menendez, with the Menendez brothers. And I want to follow this case with Eduardo because and again, this is new. He just filed the charges in November of 2022. But if you guys go back and look at the Menudo Forever documentary, other members have come forward. Other members have come forward on that documentary. Former members of Menudo said, listen, this happened. We saw it happen. And I remember specifically one of them telling the story of seeing Roy in the room in his towel, walking around in a towel. So and Eduardo is still alive. He lives in Puerto Rico, and when they showed the footage of him from the funeral, I mean, he looked like he living a good life. He ain't looking all old and decrepit. He ain't got no gray hair. I mean, he had on a mask because this was during the Panorama, so I couldn't see his whole face, but he looked good. He looks good. Looked like he living a good life. So I pray for them, y'all. With that being said, you guys, since nobody came up here, I'm gonna go ahead and shut it down. We've been here almost 2 hours. I did not mean for this to be a 2-hour video, but it was a lot of information because, like I said, I usually break it down and do a separate video for each episode, but I just did one long episode, child. I can't. It was just, it was so much of it overlapped. I said I'm just gonna do it in one swoop. The Maxwell and Epstein documentary is something else too. It is, and I started watching the Maxwell, Ghislaine Maxwell. I started watching her documentary on, I think it was Netflix, and it was a lot. It was so much. And I actually listened to a podcast on her. If I can remember the name of the podcast, I'll tell y'all. I can't remember the name of it right now. But I remember listening to it was a true crime one of my true crime podcasts. I remember listening to it, and it talked about her and just her life, and she grew up rich and privileged, and it was a lot. It was a lot. It was a lot. But anyway, so I'm gonna shut it down. You guys meet me back here at 9:00. Meet me back here at 9:00. Well, at 9:10 for the Real Housewives of Atlanta. I'll be back at 9:10 to discuss the Real Housewives of Atlanta. Can I cover the Natalia Grace doc next? Is that little girl? Well, they thought was a little girl, but she was a grown ass woman. You talking about that documentary? Atkinson, I remember that story from a long time ago. I remember years ago. I'm not gonna say I won't. I'll put it on the list. I'm not gonna say I'm gonna say right now it's not a priority, but I can't say I won't say no. I won't say no. I'm gonna say it probably won't be in the next week. Okay. Thank you for the Cash App. Thank you. I'm gonna say Miss Clemens. Y'all know I hate saying people government name, but thank you for the Cash App. I appreciate that. Appreciate that much. But I'll put it on my list. Someone needs to be knocking on Eduardo's door. I'm sure he got security, child. Remember, he's still very protected in Puerto Rico. He's still very protected. All right, you guys. I'm gonna get out of here. We will show up whatever you do. I have the documentary breakdowns. Thank you so much. Quick announcement before I get out of here too. Over on TSF Entertainment, for those of you that enjoy Power, we are going to start doing retro reviews, going back to the beginning. So we are going to start with Power, the original Power, season 1, episode 1. So if you haven't caught Power from the beginning, you can join us over there. Or if you just want to reminisce and remember what we forgot, because a lot of stuff you forget, child. That was years ago. Um, I watched the first episode last night, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, look how young everybody looks!" And Tariq is probably like 10 years old, like he's a little kid. Voice hadn't even changed yet. Okay. Anyway, so we're gonna be doing that over on the TSF Entertainment. With that being said, I'm out of here, you guys. I will see you guys later on tonight. Have a good afternoon. Mwah. Peace.